I would like to introduce Chris Allen, founder and Chief Strategy Officer for Quantum Retail Technology. Chris has worked exclusively in the retail industry over the last 2 decades. He has worked with a wide variety of leading retailers around the world. Cumulative learning from some of the best apparel, hardlines, grocery, and convenience retailers has helped him define and shape the next generation of retail software solutions. Thank you, Chris, for joining us today.
Okay, thank you very much. So what we should do first is take a look at some of the challenges the fashion industry is facing right now. With the current economic climate, that goal that's been set of maintaining or increasing market share has become more challenging than it has been in the past. There are several ways that a retailer may address this challenge. Firstly, by trying to increase availability. More stuff out there can lead to more sales. Increasing the number of stores or the number of channels in which they're touching the customer, or increasing the number of visits any individual customer is making. The other way that they can address it is by trying to tailor the assortment to better fit the local needs. In other words, instead of trying the one shoe fits all, try to create an assortment that fits the market that's being locally addressed. The problem is that some of these are counterproductive to some of the other goals that the fashion retailer has. Increasing the availability whilst increasing sales and market share, or maintaining that, will lead to eroded margin through the increase in excess product that's left over at the end of the life cycle. The other areas that are issues are things like the complex supply chain that's introduced by starting to increase that store count by a larger amount, or by addressing channels which maybe have been dabbled with before but never really exploited to the kind of volumes that people are looking at right now. The other area is, of course, the increased workload and the increased pressure and stress that it's putting on the individuals in the organization. Managing a one-size-fits-all across a retail chain is very different from managing a localized assortment and the challenges that go with that, as is trying to increase the number of customer visits, where you're obviously trying to change the offering, and we'll be talking about that in a little bit. Let's start with increasing availability. Well, that certainly doesn't mean pile it high. One of the big things here is understanding what needs to be available and where. In other words, where is it appropriate to have deeper product or shallower inventory to match the localized needs of what's going on. The other part of that is not just where do I need the product, but when do I need it. There are some stores or some regions or some areas where a new product introduction will fly off the shelves like hotcakes. Others will be slower to pick up on those trends, slower to buy that new product and slower to purchase it. So understanding when a given type of product is going to peak and where it is going to peak allow you to understand how better to place the inventory that you have bought and better leverage that inventory to full price sales. The middle point there is pretty interesting as well, which is what is good? What is good availability? Although this sounds a simple thing to say, many people haven't got a clear statement of what they're looking for in terms of inventory availability. Most people don't even have a measure that helps them to understand what their availability is. For a very short life product that's only living for 6 to 8 weeks, might be a very different level of customer service and demand capture than a product that's living for 26 weeks or a continuous line. So understanding what is good and using the inventory that you've got and positioning it best to play into that goal is very, very important. Next is store and channel growth. Obviously, store growth has been stunted for most retailers recently, and people have looked to increasing their sales through exploiting new channels or exploiting to a greater degree those channels they're already in. But it raises some interesting questions, not just in the supply chain, but on the merchandising side. What does it mean to offer your products to the same customer through multiple channels, both from a can they buy it online, pick it up in the store, can they buy it in the store and get it delivered directly to home, and also from a case of when can they purchase that product. It may be available earlier online, and it may be available later overseas because of different sales windows and things like that. And additionally, what can they purchase? Most people are not offering their full assortment online, or they've gone to the other extreme and they're offering a much broader range than in the local store in their online offering or in their catalog offering. And managing the supply chains and the complexities around both the forward logistics and reverse logistics to support those processes can be very complicated. And it needs a deep understanding of how you're trying to manage that product. The kind of things that come up here are where a great new product is introduced, but it gets online first. And the online business picks it up and sells like hotcakes. Goes out the store, out of stock. All of a sudden, there's no inventory to put into the stores for when it's due for its bricks and mortar introduction. You need to be able to manage the inventory that you have across multiple channels, not in a siloed way that means that you can't leverage the understanding of where demand is different across those channels and how that changes over time, but in a way that enables you to ring-fence inventory to make sure that you protect product to support the sales in those other channels where they don't necessarily get introduced at the same time. Increasing customer visits is around changing the offer that you're giving to the customer, which can be done in a couple of different ways. Two obvious ones are promoting product, right? Drive the customer through the door by changing the financial offer, the transaction that you're making with them. Second part is around the newness. Bring them in the door because there's something new for them to see. But the newness and the introduction of continuous new lines, especially in the fashion environment, increases the complexity on both the assortment and ranging and on the replenishment and allocation side. But it can be achieved, and what needs to be understood is the role that the products are playing in the assortment. Why are they there? If they're there to give that flavor of newness to the customer, then the service level that you need for those can be very different, again, as we said earlier, from those products that live for a far longer time. And that's because there's going to be another new product come just around the corner anyway. And these are the customers that are coming in to see that newness. The last area is around tailoring the assortment to fit local needs. And this is about understanding that one size does not fit all when it comes to the products that you're offering the customer and where you're offering them. So understanding where specific products are ranged and the underlying demand and trend and how products react to, how customers react to different types of products is very, very important. The next part of that is, how is the product bought? Is this bought as part of a continuity basket, or is this bought as the destination product? Is this a product that's bought as soon as it gets onto the shelf, or is it something that people need to pick up and understand about and see it in the magazines and see it on TV before they're likely to pick it up? Which leads us to the third point here, which is when are particular products ranged to some stores. Where you have very fashion-forward stores in fashion-forward areas, which can be identified not necessarily by demographics, but by the way that your products sell in those stores, it's very important to understand that those are the stores that need to get that newer product or that more fashionable product earlier and quicker and first. Those are the stores that you're going to be using to trial that product in. And from a read on that, you can use that to drive how you're going to be fulfilling that across the rest of the chain. It doesn't do you any good to have a lot of that newer product sitting in a whole bunch of stores which never pick up on early trends, especially in this area of product, especially in this area of the assortment. The last area is, how are they stocked? Tailoring the assortment to fit local needs is very important. If you want to be able to pick up on the differences in demand from one location to another, you need to be addressing that difference in demand with the products that you're selling and the depth that you're holding those products in. This goes back to the point that one size does not fit all when it comes to your customers. This is extremely visible in the US, where you have so many different areas, East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, North, South, holiday destinations, and so on, that every store is not going to hold the same kinds of products. But understanding how those products are likely to sell and where they're likely to sell doesn't have to come down to demographics.